everybody.
Thank you, Doug. Good afternoon.
Thank you to all joining us via Zoom and to all in attendance here. This is the September 15th, 2021 Operations Committee meeting being held in a hybrid format. And let me just see right here. We have Board Member Mr. Stribinger, Board Member Mr. Earl Campbell, Board Member Kathy Robine, Board Member Mr. Smith, and let's see, Mr. Corbin, you're online, Dr. Campbell.
Yes.
What else am I missing here? Mr. Mack, Mr. Kelly. Okay, great. Well, welcome everybody. So let's go ahead and bring this meeting to order, and let us start by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. However, we do not have the committee meeting minutes at this time. So can I have a motion?
So I move that we approve the agenda without item D, approval of committee meeting minutes.
Mr. Smith, will you second that? Hearing no second, I will second it. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. So 2-0, vote not passed. Okay. All right. Our next order of business is to review SS 18, the Progressive Discipline Plan, Student Code of Conduct, and we have Dr. White here. So, welcome, Dr. White. Hi, nice to have you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So we were ready to just jump in. If you want to give us a little intro as to why this is being brought forward.
Okay, good afternoon. So actually,
Thank you.
Dr. Campbell and Ms. Starmat will take over most of it, but the reason it's been brought forward since the last time that it was shared with the board, we had to make some changes based on some language, a new language that came down from the State Department of Education regulations for us with some definitions and an addition of a couple of codes. So we added 2 new codes and we did some updating of definitions. So for ease of readability and to draw attention, any changes that were made are highlighted in yellow in the document. And a lot of those changes are just definitions or that we just added another intervention to the area. So Ms. Turmat, if you want to bring and highlight some of those changes with the 2 addition of the 2 code additions as well as the definitions. Thank you.
Excuse me one second, Dr. White, would you like questions during the document or all at the end?
Let's do them at the end.
Okay, Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. So as Dr. White mentioned, the major revisions, this SS 18 is part of the larger Progressive Discipline Plan Student Code of Conduct that was worked on during the 2019-2020 school year, which was put together by a committee of stakeholders. And it really is a great handbook for us to have as a district, to have all of the easily found in one place. So last year, I was able to review the SS 18 and get us even more, because the purpose of the revision initially was to get us in compliance with the State Department. So in working with additional stakeholders last year, I was able to refine some of the things that were overlooked by having so many people working on one document. So as Dr. White mentioned, the highlighted portions are what have been added. Where it says from state manual, that is from the incident management manual that the South Carolina Department of Education puts out. So incident management is the system through Power School where all of the data for incidents from schools is kept and managed. There were 2 additional codes that were added. Code 295 was sexting, and then I believe code 575 was drug paraphernalia. And both of those were new codes that were not previously, that the State Department did not previously have. And so we added those. And then as Dr. White mentioned, we did add additional interventions that were just overlooked in the compilation of the original document. So I really just took what was already a solid code of conduct and I just refined with some slight revisions that were presented to me through getting input from additional stakeholders.
And I just wanted, you okay? Everybody in? I just wanted to add that Meredith and I had spoken with Dean Coleman in the Department of Education, and we asked her if we could have those 2 additional codes, one for paraphernalia as well as one for sexting. That was as a result of some disciplinary matters that arose last year. So we sent her the definition of the statute Title 16 for paraphernalia. And we really appreciate the way they work with us and how those get used. So Meredith, I wanted to thank you and Dr. Campbell and Dr. White for your excellent work on this project that we could update and make it better. We miss you, Meredith. Meredith is now the assistant principal at May River High School.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So are there questions?
Is there anyone that has a question? I think that is it.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, Ms. Boatwright?
So this is the MTSS, is that the multiple tier? Okay, so that comes from the state because that was added in here many points. Is that the source of all these changes, the MTSS behavior plan?
So the MTSS behavior plan was added as an intervention in the intervention section. It was in there in some parts, but not consistently in all the parts that it needed to be in.
Okay.
And we do have the State Department does have an overarching framework for MTSS that school districts follow as well.
So this is just helping us line up better with the state.
Yes, and to be more in compliance and regulations and the statute.
The only comment I had was like cyberbullying. And I just thought it was odd that, I'm sorry, I'm pulling my mask down, hope you don't mind. They said basically that was only if someone was on property or at a school sponsored event. And it's like we've added sexting and intimidation and bullying and cyberbullying. So I think, does it really matter? Like, are those different discipline responses for cyberbullying or intimidation, or how does that work?
Meredith, and you want to take that?
Sure. So the reason for the differentiation is because of the numbers that are in that very first column. The state codes them as different offenses, and so that is the reason for the differentiation.
That it?
Yeah.
Okay. I had a couple of questions, if I may. And this one, Dr. White, you probably can address this one. Thank you. Sorry. And everybody on Zoom hear us? Okay, great. Dr. White, you might be able to address this one. Letter M on the opening, page 2. So it talks about in-school suspension.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is really the practicality of it. You know where it says here, services are not required for students with special needs to, if they've not been removed for 10 days, which I understand is a change of placement and all that. But how do you actually keep track the hours or days that a student with special needs is in ISS? Because I think when we look at the data, we know that a significant number of students with special needs are sent to ISS.
So, yeah, so
So
they
how
do,
does that track?
so they do have to code those in incident management in Power School. And we do report that data every year during the summer to the State Department. So it's kept up. Anytime they're removed from the general education into in-school suspension, it must be coded in Power School. So that's one way that we keep up with it. And based on that days, then you just align that with the IEP to see what services they need. So typically, the majority of our students that go to ISS at most schools, can't say consistently, but most schools still make their services accessible to them as well.
Yes, I think in practice, most
Yeah.
do still provide services even
Yes.
though they're in ISS, but you wouldn't wait till the end of the year to determine compensatory services were
No.
needed. You would, who monitors?
So we have, and I was just working on that. So in our procedure guide, we have an ISS tracking form that the schools and the case managers have, and they're supposed to complete those and actually send them on our way after, I think, 2 days in ISS. So we can help them streamline and come up with some strategies before it gets too late.
Okay, thank you. Robin, are there any other hands up?
I don't see any.
Okay, could I then ask you what a restorative circle is?
Meredith, restorative circle?
Yes, a restorative circle is at the heart of restorative practices, and essentially it is a conference with an administrator, a counselor, the behavior management specialist, and then if there was a conflict with students, the students, in addition to the parents, can be involved, and you all sit in a circle and you discuss the conflict. The state of South Carolina has added that as a assigned action for students and for specific consequences as they are moving more towards a restorative approach to discipline. So that's kind of the gist of it. Do you need me to clarify anything, Ms. Fidrett?
No. I think any interventions we use, I just had not heard that term. So, I think it's great to have these interventions. Was not familiar with that. Ms. Robine? Kathy, you're muted.
I know. Okay, I was trying. I'm sorry, I couldn't get my hand up soon enough. I do have a question about M. I'm a little confused with the in-school suspension because, the students are getting classwork, right? And that classwork should be related to what they're doing in school. It shouldn't be just busy work. But then it says services are not provided that enable the child to progress in the general curriculum or in the student IEP. Well, see, I guess are they delineating work versus human services? Because to me, when a student's in ISS and a special ed student in ISS, he or she should be getting assignments that are congruent with their IEP, right? That are work that supports the IEP. So to me, that would enable the child to progress. I thought ISS, part of the beauty of ISS was kids could continue with their education. So I'm a little confused with that.
So I know that these came straight from the state manual, Meredith, so I am going to follow up with AV because I feel like that sentence should read they are provided and just see if that was a typo on their end because we do make sure that we have the services. We're not required in the subsequent, like the next sentence says, if it's 10 days or less. So I'm not sure if they were trying to say that we don't have to and then said that sentence, but this came directly from them. So I'll follow up with them tomorrow to make sure that that's not a typo on their part and just bring it to their attention and make sure that it reads correctly here in our district.
I know that our practices are that we do.
Yeah.
But if you go by the policy, then this seems to read that you don't have to.
Well, they contradict in themselves because they say 10 days or less, which is, we don't have to.
Right.
But then we're still required to make sure if it's more than that, that they have access to services. So I'll just get with Amy at the State Department tomorrow. Bring that to their attention.
And Meredith, may I ask about, on page 47, there's a category code number 275, and it says failure to complete schoolwork. And it was just interesting to me that for grades 6 through 8, for the third occurrence, you have a behavior plan. But if you look at the high school level, and I didn't write down what page that was, but code 275 in the high school, they have an academic intervention plan. And I was just wondering why middle school would not have an academic intervention plan and just have a behavior plan, especially if it might be an 8th grader that was taking high school level classes.
So to be honest with you, Ms. Fidrich, that was probably an oversight on my part.
Oh, no, I just was wondering if maybe it was, if it was tied to high school credits or something along those lines. And I was wondering what the difference between a behavior plan and an academic intervention when so don't say, Meredith, please don't apologize. You've got a lot going on. I read the document and I just had some questions.
Yes, no, I understand. And to answer your question, the academic plans and behavior plans, the goal is the same, is to provide support to the students. In one instance, we're providing support academically. So those interventions are geared more towards assisting them with their schoolwork and obviously the content, whereas behavior, it's more an attempt at behavior modification while offering them support in the school setting.
Okay, I thought maybe there were two different things, but maybe the academic intervention is also needed at middle school, but, okay.
Can I ask one more question? Is this, because I'm looking at more from a parent standpoint. Sure. Is this going to be, how can parents find out about what constitutes an infraction and what, if they have questions?
Right. So this is posted on the district's website, the webpage, and then we're going to put another mechanism in place for schools to inform parents of its availability as well, because not all parents know to go there. So we'll probably send, I think, Meredith, we had some very simple 2 and 3 pagers for the different matrices for the different levels that we can also share with parents or do a parent-friendly one as well. Something very small and succinct, then with the contact information for who they can go to for further information or greater details.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mr. Smith?
In Spanish.
And in Spanish, yeah, available.
Just to.
He needs to mute one of his devices.
Mr. Smith, perhaps you need to mute one of your devices.
Just to go back to the to what Ms. Richards was speaking about. My question would be along the my questions would be along the terms of when special ed, not only when special ed students go to ISS or get any suspension, how is that tracked differently versus any other student? Because that does seem to be a problem, because I know in some school cases, I've had parents who have called me and told me that the schools have called them and tell them to pick up their child and have not given them any paperwork, or the school has told their kids just to go to ISS for a little while and there's no referrals, or things of that nature. How do we keep a tracking? How do we so that there's a structure sort of that's taking place that we do that we know about that, and how does that affect the core part of what we're doing today?
Okay, so if I think I understood you correctly, you're asking what mechanism or processes we have in place to track when students go to ISS and or when parents are notified, whether they're in there for a short period of time or if they're asking them to come and making sure that they have the referral and the disciplinary infraction given to them at the time of pickup. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And also that
Okay.
it is put into the, what is, go ahead. We can start with that. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we have those processes spelled out. Meredith, you can jump in whenever you want to, for administrators to understand that these are the procedures that you follow and to make sure that they're informing parents and also making sure that they're documented in the incident management. Any removal must be documented. It's only when it gets to be past a certain number of hours in a day that's counted as a full day. But they understand in the student code of conduct and the progressive matrix that those are things that they have to follow. So I think that a question of what we need to do is how do we ensure that those processes and procedures that we put in place are being adhered to by school administrators. And that's where our training comes in. You know, Dr. Campbell can speak to this. We have sessions with assistant principals where some of this is shared and will continue to be shared like for tomorrow, like tomorrow's a meeting, and I'm working with Barbara Drayton, who's actually doing a presentation to assistant principals, and part of that would be discipline and those kinds of things about removals and what should happen. And we kind of continue that series, and then we have the space is created for us to do the same thing with the principals. So I think we just have to be very intentional about making sure we follow through with that and holding people accountable to follow the processes and procedures that we put.
Thank you. Also, so in the process when we do find this out to happen, because I know I've had several parents that have called me and said that they have not received anything in writing. On the special ed side of it, we do have coordinators, correct?
We have what?
Coordinators.
Yes, we have coordinators. Yes.
So how could the coordinators, my question is just, how could the coordinators play an integral part of mitigating or keeping an eye on some of that?
So as I mentioned before,
Not trying to get them any more work. Yes, ma'am.
right. So we have that form that is a tracking form that they have to submit to us after every 2 days in ISS, and that must be submitted to the coordinators for them to go back and work with the schools in that process as well. And when we get to a certain level of infractions, they actually need to be contacting the coordinators every time a removal occurs then, especially after 10 days. So we can monitor that and help them with the interventions that they're putting in place to keep the kids in the classroom.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Not seeing any. Dr. White, Ms. Vermack, Dr. Campbell, thank you very much for bringing this forward to us. We greatly appreciate it. Wendy, thank you for all your help with this. And how exciting to hear that Barbara Drayton's coming down to speak to the assistant principals or via Zoom or
So
however.
via Zoom 9:45 to 10:45 tomorrow.
We talked to her today.
Fabulous, fabulous, great. All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Ms. White.
All right, the next thing on our agenda is Oe4 Personnel Administration, and that would be Miss Walton.
Thank you, Ms. Cricket. Supposed to be on.
Actually, excuse me, Madam Chair. Are we looking at last motion before the board?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What are we doing with that? Was that something that needed to come before the board, or was that an update?
It will come before the board.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
It's like an administrative regulation. So it will automatically go in front of the board. It's for information purposes for us first and ask questions, and then it will be presented to the full board.
Right, but my question is that something that requires a vote, or is that?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you though.
So Ms. Bridget, I'm gonna, follow your lead on this, and you can tell me what you'd like for me to do at this point. I can tell you what my thought was, when I submitted to board docs yesterday. I looked at the work plan and I looked at the subsections of OE4 that should be presented in September. And after I communicated with you a bit, we talked about going through the interpretations of the superintendent and the committee going through those actual interpretations and making suggestions. And we had not done that with OE4.
Right.
So what you have in front of you now is the original thought of what was presented in September. So if you want to put that aside, we can, and we can start with the superintendent's interpretation. And then we can also go through the regulations or the expectations for all of the subsections from OE4. We only have shells, we have no shell lines in OE4. And there are only 12 subsections in this Oe4 Personnel Administration. So we've gone through each one of those subsections and we have grouped them together based on a likeness. A perfect example is subsection 1 and subsection 2. We talk about background checks for paid employees, and we also talk about background checks for volunteers. So we group those two together because they're same systems and we do the same requirements for those.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Ms. Walton. And so I asked Robin to put the annual plan, have it available. So Robin, can we just show everyone that's, here what Ms. Walton's referring to when she says the annual plan, and how that aligns with what was recently, was it 2 board meetings ago that was
That's the
passed?
work session.
Work session?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see right here, and if you scroll down to, keep going. Yeah.
Then you're all in the block.
Yeah. I think it's actually, hey, November business session, OE4.
Correct.
So this is bringing it, definitely in time to have some conversation about it. And if you scroll further down, it breaks it. No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's it.
I
Make
guess
it smaller.
page 2. Oh, that's just, okay. So there's another section to this that really then breaks it down.
It brings it
Into which
Subsection.
subsections are brought forward in September, October, November. So these are why.
That page is what you're looking at.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Thank you. So 4.0, here's 4.1, 2, 3, 4, just as you brought forward.
Yes.
Okay, great. Some of the OEs that we have looked at in the past have been brought to us in a little different format. So can you pull up OE8? I just brought this. I wanted to show you what we looked at with OE8. And what it basically did, Ms. Walton, is it took each one of these and it gave like the interpretation, the superintendent's interpretation, and then it also gave evidence indicators, like indicators that has been accomplished, and then yeah.
That's the same.
Yeah, that's,
That was.
there we go.
that was-
Okay, so this is the OE8 policy that for facilities, and this is what we see in the governance book. And then when it was presented to the operations committee, you can go down to, just keep scrolling down.
Okay, I closed it out, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I got a little too fast.
I just, that happens when I have too much coffee in my fingers.
This is just OE8. You want,
Just,
so you wanted the stipulation.
I wanted the one on June 9th that we looked at OE8 for the superintendent's interpretation.
Okay, so
Okay.
I can get that.
Yeah, it was June 9th, board docs, yeah. I remember correctly. So, Ms. Walton, the only reason I'm saying this is that when we looked at some of the operations committee also looked at some of the finance OEs, and it was the exact same template. So that's kind of what I thought maybe the chiefs had all looked at and said, we're going to use the same template. So I'm just telling you, in my mind, that was my expectation. That doesn't mean that's how it has to be, but I just kind of wanted to show you that this is how I thought it was going to be presented. Yeah, further down, when it gets to, actually, there we go. All right, so here's the policy. Here's the interpretation as to what that policy means. And then here are some monitoring indicators. And if you just kind of scroll through, you'll see that each section is interpreted as to what exactly does that mean.
Okay.
And goes into how it will actually be shared with the board eventually, evidence that that's exactly what's happening. Because with this coherent governance, you know, the theory is to stay out of the operations and therefore just govern through these operational expectations. Okay. So knowing that and not having had read this yet, okay, perhaps this is exactly what that is, and maybe you could share that with us.
I believe that's what this is.
Okay, can you walk us through this?
Yes,
Okay,
if you
great.
will look at the
Thank you, Robin.
Superintendent's interpretation, and they're all on this one page, because it's only the one OE with the 12 subsections.
Right here.
Yes, and it all deals with personnel administration. So these are the interpretations based on those 12 subsections of what this OE actually means. And then if you will look on your sheet that's marked draft with the expectations, these are the monitoring pieces that we will look for as we go through all 12 subsections to interpret and come up with the evidence. So it's probably a little bit, it's not lined by each subsection, but as a single OE.
Okay. I'm going to need some time to,
Can I jump in
Please.
with something? Yes. So my question was like just starting from OE 4.1, background inquiries of paid personnel.
Yes.
To me, the interpretation needs to have more concrete things for me to hang my hat on, because can everyone hear me on Zoom? No, mic. BCSD conducts appropriate background screens, which may include professional references. What I kind of want to know is what's an appropriate background screening? How do we break that down? What is included when, so that we know if we're holding somebody accountable for having done this, that we know exactly what they were supposed to do. To me, the only problem with this is it's so vague. It just says we'll do something at some point. Just, you know, I need a little more, in my opinion, when we've looked at other OEs, it needs to be a little more specific. That was kind of my interpretation of it. Because it's appropriate background screening, appropriate, how do we define appropriate? How do we define may? What constitutes professional references? Because I know we do criminal background checks on all of our employees, right? We do the sex offenders registry. So there are things that we do on everybody. And then there are probably some things we do in certain situations, and probably some things we only do on, you know, administrative hires. And that's what I would like to see on the interpretation.
So point of clarification.
Yeah.
If we use Sterling to do our background checks for volunteers, so as evidence for that, the system is Sterling. Do you want listed everything that Sterling checks in that background screening?
Well, so they must generate some sort of report, right? Sterling can't.
Oh, they generate a background check on everyone. They
Except
run
for the
through.
volunteer process. So yeah, I mean, to me, what I would like to know is what is Sterling doing for each volunteer? If it's the same, I've gotten not used to talking in mass. If it's the same for all volunteers, you know, which I assume it is,
Yes.
Okay, so then all what I would need to know is what background checks, we've hired Sterling, what are they conducting? And then a monitoring thing would be, what, a quarterly report or an annual report, I don't know how often. But that's another thing is frequency of the monitoring. And I don't know if we've talked about that or if you and Dr. Rodriguez have talked about, is that something that gets generated to show we're in compliance with OE 4.2?
I would have to go back to the annual work plan and see if,
Because monitoring frequency is a thing that I've seen a lot.
yeah, and we did not necessarily have that for every OE. I mean, it had not been established. It was on, every one, but it was not necessarily determined because some of them are already, like the construction update, that's a monthly thing, that's already done. The annual report,
Yes.
Right.
so
So I don't know if the volunteer thing would be something that would be done annually or quarterly, or
right.
I can't imagine any more than quarterly.
But what would we present in that report? The number of backgrounds that we did?
Yeah, so
I don't know what the monitoring is because we do that on a daily basis in terms of the system when they spit out for us all of these checks.
So I guess like a governance issue might be if there was an issue with a volunteer who was in there, who had been identified as someone who was supposed to be on some registry, there was a failure at some point, that we would know how often are we checking it. I don't know if it has to be presented to the board, but surely someone is making sure that the volunteers that come into the school have had these background
We
checks.
check that every day.
Yeah. So there would be some sort of monitoring frequency. It's, to me, the operational expectations are what do you guys expect? What do we expect you guys to do so that if there is a variation, we have that expectation to hold it up to, you know what I mean? And we talked about background inquiries. Of course, I'm hot on the trail of wanting to add cyber vetting. That's not in this OE, but that would be something that if we wanted to talk about it, we would pull out what we're already doing and see if we were already had that done. So to me, appropriate background screening, which may include a number of things, doesn't give me enough information to say this is what we're doing and this is what we should do differently, or this is what we need to take a vote on, whatever governance, higher level policy issues we're trying to decide on. So I don't know what was presented to the board as far as monitoring frequency.
So my inability right now to actually wrap my head around all this is because the document that was in board docs is what I, was looking at. And so I've not had a chance to review this. And so what I'm looking at is OE4 has the headline, the superintendent shall ensure, and so on, exactly what you have up here. So this interpretation, these bullets right here, Ms. Walton, these are expectations include. So is the interpretation for all of these expectations, or can you help me form the context around what this interpretation is? Is it for this opening line right there?
Yes, this interpretation is OE4.
For
What the expectation is of OE4. What
Okay.
will OE4 do? And what the superintendent is going to do to make sure that he is in compliance with OE4.
Right. So then this is a more comprehensive interpretation of just this, and as compared, so the interpretation for each one of these subsections then is, well, let's take a look at 4.1. Background inquiries of paid personnel.
That's a
Okay,
subsection.
right.
Yes.
So the interpretation is to conduct extensive background inquiries and checks prior to hiring any paid personnel.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay, so a little different format, but I understand it now. I would very much like to suggest that we have an opportunity to take a look at this so we can be so much more clear with you as far as any requests for additional information or documentation once we've had a chance to look at this. So Ingrid, Mr. Smith, Ms. Boatwright, what do you think about that idea?
Sounds good to me.
Mr. Smith?
Earl's hands up.
Oh, Mr. Earl Campbell, yes, please.
Yes, I just want to comment on the volunteers.
because I'm very familiar with this. All our volunteers go through a really strict background check. And ever since I've been on the board, they start doing this, it's been very successful. So the company that does this, they look for everything. You know, so I'm just letting you know that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that information, Mr. Campbell. Your perspective over the years is very important, so we greatly appreciate that. So Ms. Boatright, I don't know if Mr. Smith is still on or if he's having trouble.
Yeah, I actually I was speaking, but then I saw Mr. Campbell's hand up, and I saw you called on him as I was speaking, so I waited. But I have no problem with what you recommended. I can go along with that. I have no problem with that. That'd be great. That's great.
Okay. All right. So Ms. Walton, can we, without putting you in a bind, or I mean, as far as a time crunch, would it be okay if we did put this on next month's operations committee?
Oh, not at all. No,
Okay.
that's fine with me. But I do have three things I need the board to clarify for me.
Yes.
As we move forward. And I believe it is highlighted. Robin, what you just had up on the top of page 2.
The C link.
Okay.
And that is an expectation out of the actual OE itself.
Oh.
And that is to create an evaluation performance that is imperative to the superintendent's performance.
Okay,
And
so
that is to include matrix or numbers for student achievement that's not in the teacher evaluation system currently. And we do use the system created by the state, and that's not there. So what is the board asking from that OE subsection?
Okay, so it would be OE 4.11C.
Yes.
Okay, so OE 4.11C. So you're asking for clarification on that.
Yes.
Okay, absolutely.
And then I'm also asking for clarification on OE 4.6 or 4.8.
Okay.
Protect legally defined confidential information regarding personnel matters and what the board received and not received. And you reference back to an action taken in August 14th.
Okay.
And I pulled that action, and that action says the board asked the policy committee to develop policy giving the definition of confidential information regarding personnel matters and what the board will receive and not receive from the administration once the disposition has been made.
Okay.
I'm unclear about that.
Yes. Understandably so. Okay, very good.
And then the last one, and this is just the very last statement under the OE itself. The superintendent may not prevent employees from briefing to the board.
Okay.
Does that mean you would like for HRS 15, which is employee grievances, reworked to include the board as an alternative for final hearing body?
An internal okay, so it actually, the superintendent may not prevent employees from grieving to the board when internal grievance procedures have been exhausted and the employee alleges that district procedures outlined have been violated. Okay, so I certainly can't speak for the board's intent as what that means, so we will get clarification for you on that as well. Thank you for bringing that question, Ms. Walton.
That's OE, what was that one?
It's the very last paragraph on OE4. Great. Thank you. Thank you for, explaining. First of all, I'm such a visual person to, see it in this format, a little different. So thank you for that.
No, not at all.
And for understanding, just need a little bit of time to review it.
That's fine. I was just trying to stay the schedule.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else from anybody regarding this? I'm seeing hands up you. No. Okay.
I was going to ask you, what would be the remits that we will be handling the clarification of these questions?
What do you suggest, Mr. Smith?
I'm asking you. I mean, I figured since you're the chair and you're leading, I wanted to see what were you going to do, because I wanted to go ahead and so we can understand how we were going to do it at this time.
Well,
Policy committee.
Mr. Smith, I was just going to give myself a little bit of time to think it through instead of making a decision right now. So that's why I'm asking if you have any ideas. I'm certainly open to an idea.
Well, I'll think about it. I guess I can think about it as well. Yeah, I can ponder on it too. I guess we can. I guess I'll circle back with each other.
Absolutely. Yes, I certainly don't want to make this in isolation, but I do need some time to think about it. Okay.
David.
No problem.
Yeah, Mr. Stribinger.
Thank you. While you're thinking about it, this is part of the policy manual. You might want to think about sending it to the policy committee.
Yes, I think that probably would be the appropriate action. So thank you for that.
Could we have Mr. Scrivener to, Mr. Scrivener, and what part exactly are you talking about sending to the policy committee?
Mr. Stribinger, go ahead, please.
The parts that are in question, if Ms. Walton was asking for clarification, we can do it, in the board as a whole, but you could also send it to the policy committee and have that clarified.
I see what you're saying, Mr. Scrivener, but I think that all board members have a valid stake in this. So I was thinking of in a way where maybe the whole board could possibly participate and not just the policy committee, because I did. That did cross my mind, but I was just wondering how could the whole board participate, not just the policy committee? That brings me concerns.
Mr. Stribinger, do you know when the next policy committee is meeting?
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Hey, I'm sorry. I should have asked Robin. Robin, do you know when it is?
It's not set yet. They just meet as needed. So if they have something to be sent, then.
Okay.
So your chair report, you can direct.
Yeah.
Take a motion.
Great. Okay. All right, Mr. Smith, your hand is still up. Question, sir?
No, I was just in the conversation. No, not at the moment.
All righty. Okay. Ms. Walton, thank you so much. Thank you. All right, Mr. Otting and Mr. Corbin, the construction update.
Mr. Corbin will be handling this, at least starting us off.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the construction update. And Robin, if you'll go ahead and advance to slides 3 and then to 4, I'll begin with a brief update on Beaufort Elementary School. This slide right here will show you some recent progress construction photos, as well as the updated financial figures there on the left. On the next sheet, you'll also will see the yellow light from the first slides 3 showing up on this one as well. This yellow slide, or the yellow traffic light, is on there because of 2 reasons. One is the electrical subcontractor fell behind schedule. HG Reynolds has brought in additional electrical resources to improve on that. The other factor behind that yellow light is we are experiencing long lead times for the impact resistant glass associated with that connector. So we continue to monitor the schedule. We still anticipate fully that this project will be completed before the end of the year. And I guess the other update off of the slide that I can share is that the mobile classroom has been relocated at this time to Hilton Head Island Middle School. If we can move along to slides 5 and 6, they're associated with Battery Creek High School. First slide there shows some progress photos from the end of the month, as well as the financial summary. The next slide will reflect the progress that we have. Both budget and schedule are reported as green lights, indicating no issues. MB Khan is the construction manager on this project and is doing an excellent job of progressing the work, and anticipates that the building pad for the addition should be completed prior to the end of this month. For slide 7, at Robert Smalls International Academy, just wanted to share with everybody that's participating in the meeting today that the value engineering cost reductions were completed in early August. That did help control costs by reducing them by just over $1.7 million. The J.E. Dunn Amendment number 2, and that's for the construction of the replacement school, site landscaping and demolition, plus the alternate that the board selected to move forward with for the multipurpose. That was approved by the board on August 17th. Approval of that amendment did require use of program level contingency that you'll see up there under the status flag and the dollar amount that was required. This was the first use of program level contingency since April of this year. Long lead times for the steel on this project has resulted in schedule adjustments. The mobilization and site activities are now anticipated to commence in November, with the schedule reflecting that the completion of the building pad should take place by the end of February of next year. Milestone dates are shown there for the completion of the construction of the replacement school. That's what we're referring to as phase 1, scheduled for completion in July of 2023. Once that has been completed, J.E. Dunn can then move on to the phase 2 demolition and site restoration that has a completion scheduled to occur in December of 23. Slides 8 through 11, Robin, are associated with Hilton Head Island Elementary, Hilton Head Island SCA, and Bluffton Elementary and MC Riley. These projects are all making good progress. There are the yellow traffic lights that remain at Hilton Head Island SCA and Bluffton Elementary. We've reported these previously as we work to reschedule portions of the technology infrastructure scope that remains on those 2 campuses. Moving along, Robin, to slide 12, if we could. Talking a little bit about the update at Hilton Head Island Middle School. We do have a yellow traffic light under budget. We did receive the design development cost estimate from Thompson Turner Construction that indicates a potential cost overage. We've begun the cost reduction meetings, very similar to the same exercises and level of effort that we conducted for Battery Creek High School and Robert Smalls International Academy earlier this year. We're following the same procedures and protocol to move through those cost reduction opportunities. We've also have received the proposal to install and make the utility connections associated with the 6 classroom mobile unit that was moved from Beaufort Elementary. Those utility connections are scheduled to take place in November, so that that will be well in place as we still anticipate construction taking or commencing in the first quarter of next year. Moving along to slide 13 at H.E. McCracken. Cable tray has been completed. The installation of the bidirectional amplifier that improves radio first responder reception in our structures is 85% complete. And once again, similar to what I briefed on the other 2 projects, the yellow traffic light on this one remains as we continue to look at rescheduling a portion of that technology infrastructure at H.E. McCracken as well. Moving along to slide 14 at Hilton Head Island High School. Share a little bit more information that's on the slide than is on the slide. We have progressed the turf field to about 30% complete. During that progression, we did encounter issues with the soil and subsurface conditions. We've got a recommendation and we have got a proposal and put it into an amendment to address the soil stabilization that's required so that that turf field can proceed. The stone for that is to have been delivered to the site today. Before I left the office to join this meeting, I did not get an update, but I anticipate that stone did arrive today. And with that arrival, that stone will be put down, and then the installation of the turf field can begin. It's scheduled currently to start in 5 days on September 20th. Yellow traffic lights for safety security are all associated with long material lead times that didn't allow that work to take place this past summer. Revised schedule is currently being coordinated with the administrative team at the school. The other piece under the athletics, the remaining pieces of that were athletic improvements at Hilton Head High, and it's listed there on the slide. That's still in design. The designers are working to address some comments that came in from the school administration, and construction is scheduled to commence in Q4 of 2021. Moving along to slide 15 for Bluffton High School. New turf field. Once again, we've briefed this previously. We're going to coordinate that to take place after the conclusion of this football season that we're underway with right now. We have been making progress on the track improvements on that campus. All of the root issues and barriers, as well as the trimming of the trees and cutting of them adjacent to the track have been completed. Paving of the track is scheduled to begin this Friday. It'll need to cure for roughly about a week, and then we can go ahead and move forward with striping that new resurfaced track. I'm going to group the next ones. Slides 16 through 29 are a bunch of projects that are in good shape, continue to make good progress. Many of them also include 8% capital project scopes that have either been completed this past summer or are very close to nearing completion by the end of this month. Due to long lead material times and subcontractor availabilities, the St. Helena renovations are now scheduled to begin construction in October. The substantial completion for that gym renovation is scheduled to be done by next summer. The other item that I wanted to talk about was at Well Branch Elementary, the 8% capital projects associated with the HVAC replacement and remediation. Has a yellow traffic light for budget and schedule. We have received a request from the school administration that is new to investigate changing the previous approved facade. We've got it narrowed down to a couple choices right now, and just want to make everyone aware that until we know exactly what was selected, it has the potential of some additional costs and maybe some schedule delays. And until those are known and resolved, they'll remain yellow. But I hope to be able to return those back to green by the time I'm in front of the operation committee next month. Moving along to slides 30 to 33, these are all associated with 8% capital projects. There's 11 of them listed. Most of the scope includes items such as HVAC upgrades, painting, roofing, and a couple media center improvements. Many of the 8% projects have either been completed or are nearing completion. Slide 32, Robin, if we go back to it at Well Branch Middle, that roofing work is ongoing during the school year. It's roughly 30% complete right now and is scheduled to be completed before the end of this year. And for slide 33, we have a proposal in for Ladies Island Elementary Media Center. We are getting the proposal prepared, and it should be received this month. Once we look at that, we'll work with the school as well as the construction manager to determine the appropriate schedule. Most of the time, we do media center improvements during the summer break, but being that this scope at Hilton Head includes bringing in a new circulation desk, some furniture fixtures and equipment, and flooring and interior painting. Excuse me, I read the wrong line. Let me back up. The media center is inclusive at Ladies Island of replacing the circulation desk, removal of the power poles, furniture, and some interior painting. We think that depending upon input received from the school, there may be an opportunity to execute this either through nights and weekends or over long weekends or possibly even winter break. But we'll get that schedule ironed out, and if it can be done during the school year, we'll coordinate it. But if it needs to be postponed to next summer, we'll go ahead and postpone it. And for slides 34 and 35, talk briefly about the exercise of project closeouts. The importance of project closeouts is discussed at each and every weekly project manager meeting we hold. Majority of the projects, I'm pleased to report, have received all the closeout documentation. It's been reviewed by the architect and accepted. It's also been reviewed by our project manager and accepted. Basically, we're just down to preparing the final change order that will reconcile the remaining unused construction contingency as well as any allowances that may be associated with those projects. We are seeing some of that material prepared. There are some corrections that are taking place with that, but we stay focused on the need to get these projects closed out. Now that the summer crunch is behind us, the focus of the project managers is now even more laser focused to get these things done. Moving along to slide 36, just a reminder to everybody that one of our typical handouts is the monthly referendum 519 financial summary that was furnished as a handout or an attachment to this material. The slide 37 deals with our project contingency log. That also has been distributed with the materials for tonight. And as you heard me say earlier, this does include the first use since April, and that was associated once again with the J.E. Dunn Amendment number 2 for Robert Smalls. Also provided is the updated monthly amendment tracking log. We shared that for the first time last month. Each month going forward, we'll continue to update that and issue that updated log on a monthly basis to the Operation Committee. Slides 38 and 39 are for our cash flow. Last month you heard me mention about accruing some charges from the time period prior to the end of June of this year. In the month of August, we did accrue. If you scroll down just a tiny bit more, Robin, you'll see the note at the bottom. In August, we accrued a figure of $5,250,160, and that was for services performed before the end of the last fiscal year. So that went and got posted back to the June 30th column, and that it resulted in increasing what was reported at the last meeting of $65.86 million up to $71.11 million. There is a difference now that's showing up in our column that is associated with the conclusion of last month. We were forecasting 88.77 million cumulative spent to date, but actuals is 71.67. That difference is attributed to the delays that we've experienced at Robert Smalls International Academy, and also the fact that many of our construction managers were so laser focused on completing work for the return of students. The timing of receiving invoices just didn't work out well to get figures posted against August. An example of that, we did receive in the last week of August approximately an additional $5.5 million worth of invoices, but unfortunately the last scheduled AP run for August took place on August 26th. So it just didn't give us quite enough time to capture that, but Robert and I both have been seeing an increase over the past week or two for additional payouts. So that is a positive sign there. Moving along to slides 40 and 41, talk a little bit about community outreach. For Robert Smalls International Academy, the school administrators were updated on September 2nd, and the next community meeting is being coordinated right now. Additional meeting details are going to be provided in the very near future, so those that are interested to attend that community outreach meeting may do so. We also have a meeting scheduled next week with the League of Women Voters. It's a referendum forum type of format. The meeting's going to be held at May River High at 5 p.m. and scheduled to be participants in discussion are a few clock members as well as a couple students from May River High School and possibly one additional one. The other thing I'll share on this slide, although not shown, we do have the same plans to do this at Hilton Head Island Middle School. However, we just have not had the chance yet to meet with the principal to go over the project. Once this has occurred, we'll coordinate the community outreach meeting for Hilton Head Island Middle School as well. And I guess before I move on to the next portion of the slides in this presentation, which are set for mid-program reset updates and discussions, I'll pause to see if there's any questions with the construction updates I just gave.
Thank you, Mr. Corbin. Ms. Boatwright has a question or two?
Yeah. With regards to Robert Smalls, I'm looking at the file. You said that this was the first use of program contingency since April of I can't remember right off, 3 million and something. Is that right?
Yeah, if you look at the, I would suggest that you look at the attachment 2 that was distributed. It was the referendum project contingency log. That does a really good job, I think, of starting off with what our original balance was, $17,781,187. And each and every time we've used any of those funds, they've been put on this log with explanations and dates, and it keeps a running tally. So if you go to the last page, you'll see at the bottom that Robert Small's International Academy is listed there, and it's associated with the J.E. Dunn Amendment number 2, as I mentioned.
Yeah, and I was trying to kind of set up my question here. So on the 519, and it says a prop, which I'm assuming means appropriated. So for Robert Small, it says Small even with glasses, 62,443,864 was appropriated. And now the budget is 68,464,404. So an adjustment of an additional $6 million. What I see, you said we're using a contingency of $3 million. Can you explain these numbers to me?
Yes, I'm looking at the 519 report so that we can see that information. It's the modifications came about in 2 fashions. One was the additional contingency use that we're speaking of, but at Robert Small's, we also saw that that project had in its project level funding summary sheet, which goes into more detail than what this 519 does. It actually had budgeted funds for design services, but as you're maybe aware, in the 519 report on that first page under O1 district section, there is a pot of funds that were established that was $18,004,160. That was intended to pay for design services. So we were able, fortunately, to identify this. And what we did was we brought the money from the top O1 section out of the $18 million figure and brought it into this project. We wanted to bring it down so that it would be identifiable as a portion of this. Usually what we do with that 519 report is as we use portions of that $18 million, it's just put right underneath of it. But in this case, in talking with financial services, they recommended that it came down to the project level, and that's why that adjustment took place. The total adjustments to date at Robert Small's on the 519 report shows it increased by $6,020,540. So that difference is made up of program level contingency and the design fees.
So just to clarify, you then took the design fees off of Robert Small's International Academy and used the bucket of 18 million to pay Robert Small's design fees so that it was not included. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and what it allowed us to do was to take those project level previously identified design fees and apply them to what was needed to award the J.E. Dunn Amendment number 2.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I'm trying to follow the trail. So in Battery Creek, there's design consultants as part of the expenses, and then there's a amount in red. So that was money. Was that money that then came back out from that 18 million? Because you've got design consultants for Battery Creek of 3,100,383, and then it's adjusted negative 2,314,339.
Yes, so if you scroll down a little bit further, Robin, to Battery Creek, a couple more pages.
Under construction. Okay, I get you. So basically, what Mr. Otting's showing me is that those adjustments, you guys put it under renovations construction.
Right. We did not. We were able to award Battery Creek, as this bottom line shows there, you'll see in the column adjacent to the original 56,075, 773 budget, that those items that are in the next column to the right, the black figures in the red, they netted as zero. So there was no change bottom line at Battery Creek. So that we did not have to pull any money down from up top. Battery Creek had enough money at the project level to award that GMP to start that work.
Okay, I guess fundamentally when all this is said and done, it seems like we're using a different process, but maybe it's all fun. It's harder for me to track it.
I mean, to answer that question is yes, it is a different, I guess, not necessarily a different process, but we use different funding mechanisms. Just Battery Creek had enough money in its budget to cover it. And as we experienced some of the price increases and what we did at Robert Smalls, we had to bring other money into that project from up top.
From the 18.
Yeah, so the two things is we brought the project contingency funds that the board voted on, and then we also brought design services funds down into that as well.
Okay, so that is something that could be considered in the bill too, the $4 million cost overruns.
If needed, yes.
Okay. I have another question, but I want to go around the horn. Monopolizing.
No, I don't see anybody else does, so please go ahead.
Okay,
I
so,
apologize.
oh, William does. William, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Just back to what you brought up just now. Mr. Allen said that money comes from a different place. Could you specify exactly where that place comes from for Battery Creek, where that money comes from, out of what account?
So, I mean, Battery Creek did not have any additional funds added to the project budget. And we talked a lot about what we call short-term, the above the top level funds. Those are funds that were taken out to fund the entire referendum. So there was money taken out of every project that developed the program contingency funds and developed program design funds. You'll also see up there, we have legal funds, accounting. So those were funds taken out of every project to fund the entire referendum. So some of those design services funds were used and brought back down to Robert Small. Now, Rob, can you help me clarify that?
But to answer Mr. Smith's question about Battery Creek, only thing that happened was we moved dollars at the project level where, for example, design consultant line that you see on your screen now, in red there, you see that it gave up $140,000. That was a line that was at the project level for a design contingency that wasn't needed anymore. So we released that under various vendors. I believe was where we had another source of funds that after review and discussions had been identified as a overage that was not necessary, and it allowed us to move those dollars that you see in red basically up to two sources. One is the radio equipment that's already been provided to Battery Creek, and then the adjustment at the construction level where the original budget of $46,296,330 wasn't adequate at Battery Creek, and it needed to be increased by $3,109,348, which gets us to the current budget. And as you look to the right there, you'll see that the amount of money that remains in the construction, it's shown as zero. So all of the construction has been encumbered, and it's associated with the MBCON amendment. And that amendment is a guaranteed maximum price. So we should not see any additional requests coming in at Battery Creek for any additional construction funds.
You have a follow-up, Mr. Smith?
I'm just thinking about, I ponder on that. I would like to go back to the gym update. You said that the gym will be done by, and I know you said the gym will be done by next summer, but we skipped a lot of time with that estimation of time, but also we never gave a beginning or start estimate, a start date on it either. Because it seemed like saying on the gym, in other words, it's falling under a next summer's project.
Slide 23, Robert. You said next, but it actually says summer of 2023.
So Mr. Smith, the gym plans to begin this month. It will not be completed until summer 2023.
Yeah, I think the slide, if we went back and paused on it, it shows that you're speaking specifically of the St. Helena gym renovation. That renovation of the gym is scheduled to begin construction in October of this year.
I'm sorry. Yes, sorry, October.
And then the substantial completion is like what Mr. Smith said, it's scheduled for next summer. And once again, that schedule is being driven by lead times of materials as well as availability of various trade subcontractors.
Well, I guess what they're saying is on here, I gotta go back, it said June 2023, it's actually June 2022.
Oh, I missed. Yeah, that's a typo. Please excuse me. Yeah, it's this. As I said verbally, it's this coming next summer. Yeah.
I think that's what Kevin was trying to point out too. So.
Yeah. There's a big difference there. I apologize.
No problem. I just want to get understanding.
Thank you.
And then also, with that being said, I was also wondering, when were you going to bring back the safety and security or the opening? I mean the front part of the gymnasium. When were y'all going to bring that back to the board?
We are still looking at some solutions that Robert and I feel comfortable in bringing back. We have seen some that we quickly looked at and made the determination that's not what we're looking for. It just missed the mark, and we can't put anything that could be referred to as like a sore red thumb on the exterior of that facade of that structure. So we've challenged the designer to go back and come up with a more attractive solution for that entry that you speak of. So they continue to work on that, and as I said, we should have something here soon, and when we do have that, we'll get it priced, and we'll be able to share that information shortly.
Okay, because I do have some concerns about that. With it taking as long as it's taking now, God forbid if we try to go back and get that done, that could be a whole another 2 years with the way things are kind of seeing that things are moving right now. So I'm just a little concerned about that. As well as I already thought that there was a design, but the design had cost a little more than what we had banked for. So I was wondering why not bring edit the current design that we had. If that, and possibly a process question, is that what's being done better yet?
Well, I think that the design that you speak of that had been performed originally was outside of our budget capabilities. It was a significant cost to what was drawn, and Robert and I, neither one of us felt comfortable in bringing in a request for the gym renovations that would require such a significant amount of additional money. So we've challenged the designer to come up with something that still accomplishes the intent, but at a more reasonable cost. So that's where we are.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Corbin,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the contingency log,
Yes.
and I'm looking at the percent contingency that remains at 12.21%.
Yes.
And that's just concerning to me, considering we have not broken ground for Robert Smalls, Hilton Head. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Be glad to. First, big projects such as Battery Creek and Robert Smalls, they have a guaranteed maximum price that has been put under contract. They already have included in those large GMPs 5% construction contingency. So if they were to encounter anything, the first point of resolution would be to turn to that internal 5% construction contingency that's in the GMP. The other portion that I'd like to do is perhaps table this, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about the contingency as we get into the mid-program reset, because there are funds that we have identified that will bring that figure back up. And that's coming from projects that are either completed or so very close to being completed, that will allow us the opportunity to put additional dollars back into the program level contingency to bring that figure back up to a more comfortable figure.
Okay, sure, absolutely. All right, are there any other questions then? Seeing none, would you like to move into the program reset?
Yes, be glad to. And as Robin's pulling up the slide 42 and 43, I will share with everybody that an email was sent out this afternoon from Robert clarifying, because there was some thought that we may have some additional handouts. We don't have any additional handouts, and we are feeling really good about where we are with this overall exercise. But there are one or two remaining questions. The biggest one being that, what as part of what we're looking at is whether or not we're going to execute this as part of a 4-year program, or whether we want to go to a 5-year program. I'll talk a little bit about that, I guess, either now or in a bit. I guess since we're paused, let's do it right now. One of the things that is occurring with this referendum is, we've had some very unique circumstances arise. The COVID pandemic has brought with it its own challenges, but there was a lot of work that was paused in 2020. And then as things improved this year, a lot of that work, and I'm speaking of work that's outside of the district work that we're awarded and awarding now, other builders, developers, commercial properties had work that has just basically consumed our local marketplace. And what has resulted is that the vendors that work with us want to continue to support the district, but they have no more labor to assign to our project. So they're having to look at supplementing their workforce by utilizing some additional labor that's coming with a premium. The other thing that's occurring is that with the amount of work that's taking place, the contractors have set themselves up to perform work during the school year, nights and weekends. But in reality, that's not very efficient. If you can imagine, after school releases, that the contractor commences work and they try to put in an 8-hour day, the last hour and a half, and maybe in some circumstances as much as 2 hours, depending upon what activities took place that evening, are spent cleaning up and getting the facility back in a good shape so that when staff and students return the next morning, that the teaching spaces are ready to be used. So that's why we're looking at these premiums that we're paying, as well as what would happen if we were to explore extending the program from a 4-year period to a 5-year period. And of course, doing that, we have to look at escalation costs for any projects that may go out another year. So all of this is being evaluated and brought into the mid-program reset. The schedule that you see here on this sheet, just talk a little bit about it. We did present the mid-program reset to the clock earlier this month on September 1st. We're doing this update to the Operation Committee today. It was originally scheduled for the 8th, but the operation meeting slid a week, which is no problem. And then we were scheduled to do an update to the board on September 21st. With the understanding that we have not finished this fully and got to a point where we're ready to bring this fully forward, our plan is to return to the clock at their next meeting on October 6th to provide them with another update. We would then like to make sure that we hold a meeting with the Clock Finance Committee to review our materials so that we can get their take on it, to make sure that we've made it very clear and understandable, that if they had any questions, that we get those addressed. That way there, when we bring in this information to the Operation Committee at the October 13th meeting, we will have the opportunity to go through it, and hopefully the material will be very clear and understandable. Following the briefing on October 13th, we will then bring a material presentation to the full board at the second meeting in October. And then the last thing is the goals out of this, just as a reminder to everybody. We want to demonstrate that this program can be finished with the remaining available funds. You heard me say earlier that Robert and I feel very good about where we are with this exercise. The opportunity and ability to do that first goal looks to be within our reach. We have looked at what budgets need to be increased, and those budgets that are being increased, we're applying lessons learned from last year as well as from this most recent summer. But as part of the budgets, we're also looking at which projects have gone along so far that allows us an opportunity to identify savings to bring back so that we can increase that figure that's currently shown in our program level contingency log. Yes, there are going to be some challenges that come about out of this, but we want to bring solutions to those challenges as well. So we're still on track for those goals. Move on, slide 44, Robin. Once again, I talked a little bit about this already, about the local market conditions and how they are continuing to remain unfavorable for the district right now. One of the things also I want to share is at the clock meeting before I guess it was the clock meeting at the beginning of August, we were discussing with them that this was going to be kicking off this mid-program reset. One of the items that the clock requested was that we reach out and find out from the Department of Labor what assistance they may be able to offer the various construction management firms that are interested in hiring various trade laborers, etc. I did provide that report as well as part of an attachment. If you haven't had a chance to read through that, that does contain some really good information, and I would encourage you to do so. I guess the other thing that we want to talk about is the estimates and the budgets that we've analyzed. We developed some models and figures to be applied during this analysis, and we have tested that. Over the last couple of weeks, we have seen proposals coming in for various portions of that scope that we've been modeling that still needs to be completed. and we back tested it against what we were showing, and those figures are very, very close. So I feel good about how we've modeled this so far. See if there's something else on here. And I think that's probably it. So we can go on, Robin, to slide 45. This is just a summary slide that we gave to the clock. We wanted to share it with the operation committee and members present today. Gives a recap as of the end of August, showing what the original referendum funding was, 344.61 million. The total funds encumbered and paid to date through the end of August was 168,634,678, representing 49% of the overall referendum program. And that means that the remaining funds are the figures shown, which represents the other 51%. Those figures as of the end of August did not capture the encumbrance of the J.E. Dunn Amendment number 2 at Robert Smalls. Those will be encumbered this month of September. So when that occurs, these figures that I just gave for the encumbered and paid to date, those will increase from 49% to 67%, representing 2/3 of the overall program will have either been encumbered and or paid to date, leaving the remaining funds that we're looking at under this reset representing roughly 33%. Moving along to slide 46. This table is information that we shared at the clock September 1st meeting. Basically what we were trying to do was put it into larger buckets and try to give them an idea of where we were at that time and whether or not we had any anticipations that we could identify savings or any additional funds. You'll see there that at the district level 01, at that time, we weren't seeing any adjustments. We are showing the opportunity to return savings from completed projects. The additions at May River High School and River Ridge Academy is combined in the magnitude of 4.1 million. And that is higher than what we've been previously reporting to both the clock as well as through some of our conversations we've had to date with the operation committee. At Beaufort Elementary, our forecasted savings are the same there. They're higher than what we've been previously reporting, and we're forecasting savings that will exceed $3 million at that school. So just between those two, to speak to the earlier question about the contingency log and how much has been used to date, just those two lines right there represent over $7 million that can come back in. And in reviewing this, as far as the analysis of the remaining unspent project funds that can be used to increase the program level contingency, this figure is approaching roughly $10 million at this time. And that $10 million figure is really close to covering the additional project funding needs that are forecast to occur prior to the end of this year with our ongoing work. Our analysis has also indicated the potential for additional remaining project funds that could be recognized and moved to program contingency, the program level contingency, after the first of the year. And a lot of those will come from projects that are in construction right now that are a little early to count each dollar. We don't want to count our chickens before the eggs hatch, but the figures that we are modeling are conservative figures. You've heard me mention multiple times that each and every one of our projects that go into the construction phase carries a 5% construction contingency, and that construction contingency use to date from the beginning of this program through the end of last month, we have been very fortunate that we have not had to use a large portion of those. And in most cases, as you see with our earlier projects, we're very capable of returning significant funds. Now, some of our projects that are underway, as I mentioned, will likewise have similar types of opportunities that are appropriate for their scope and the amount of funds that they receive. But once again, we believe that the funds that can be moved at this point can cover us comfortably through the end of this year, and what needs will arise as we award additional work that remains. And then as we begin next year, the same thing will occur. Additional funds will be able to be swept and brought back into program contingency and be used to deliver the remaining scopes. And at this time, I'm not aware of any scopes that are being modified from what was originally planned to be delivered. And we are taking into account equity with the first projects out of the gate so that those that are following have the same opportunity to have that similar equity. And I guess with the conclusion of that, I'll sort of pause and see what questions there may be associated with the mid-program reset.
Is that right?
Thank you. So my big concern, and I shared this at the clock meeting, is Hilton Head Island Middle School, because it's 4 million or 20% roughly, maybe 15% over budget. When we looked at, because we've talked about process and procedure and equity and everything being the same, which I think we're doing a good job of. I know that we voted for the multi-purpose room at Robert Smalls International Academy because that had been presented to the community. And we wanted to give the community what they were expecting. Have we done anything like that with Hilton Head Middle, where the community knows what is involved in the renovations? Because one of my concerns is that we have a lot of new leadership at the middle school and in the Hilton Head cluster. So when you talk about trying to trim 15, 20% off in value engineering opportunities, how is that process transparent? How does the community know that the cost-cutting decisions that were made were ones that were impactful? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. Thank you for the question.
I take this, Rob.
Sure, go ahead.
I just say I would not make a comparison of Robert Smalls to Hilton Head Middle. They're just two different type projects. Matter of fact, Hilton Head Middle is probably more in line with Battery Creek.
Okay.
And actually, it's probably a little less than Battery Creek. And I say that because, well, no, Robert Smalls is a brand new building. So you really have a clean slate. Battery Creek is a renovation of an existing building with new additions and actually new outbuildings. So those new outbuildings are a clean slate. Your additions are kind of a clean slate, but what you're able to do inside the building, it's actually, Hilton Head Middle is more along the lines of Beaufort L. That is because you're really constricted on what you're able to do by the building itself. We do have a small addition going on at Hilton Head Middle, so there are some opportunities there, but it's really a classroom wing that its whole purpose is, our goal at Hilton Head Middle is to take the existing footprint of the building. Classroom sizes are small and confusing, let's just say, in the way it's laid out. So our goal is to combine spaces to make more larger defined classrooms. And the classrooms that we lose are going to be made up by the addition. So in the way that it's more like Beaufort L, it is more of a confined footprint that we're helping. We're not as free to create new spaces, develop new areas. We have to do all that within that footprint. So, and as far as, Beaufort L, I'm trying to think, we did not do any community meetings at Beaufort L.
We don't recall any, no.
Was there any cost cutting from the original budget?
There was not Actually, Rob, original
We
budget,
were able to identify some cost-saving measures that were implemented at Beaufort Elementary, but Beaufort Elementary did have a budget that, as indicated up top, has the ability to return a significant amount of funds. I guess the other thing that
I want to say this, whenever I do look at value with cost savings, value engineering exercises, there's a lot of good that comes out of that. So it's not always a bad thing, because what we do, what a lot of these exercises are, it does put constraints on the team, the architects and the contractors, on what they're able to do. And it makes them as a team look in details about the project and where are things that just do not make sense. I mean, and I think every project that I've ever done, there are a lot of good things that come out of that. And at the end of it, you're like, why didn't we think about that to begin with? You know, that was a smarter way to do it. But you have to go through that exercise of reviewing what can be done and how, what just makes better sense. I'll give you, so way back when we looked at River Ridge, when we did that design, one of the things is, we're mechanicals engineers. Well, they designed every bathroom in there to have hot water for, an hour and a half or 2 hours of use. You're like, why? There's no, number one, in bathrooms, if they have warm water, it's not the end of the world. Do we need all these massive hot water heaters? We can shrink them all down, provide, 15, 20 minutes of hot water constant, which is about what a bathroom would ever need. And we had some significant savings there. And everybody in the end said, well, that's a much better design. So that's more along the lines of what the value engineering exercise is. And we need to get, before we take it to the community, number one, since we have administrations, we got to bring them up to speed so they can actively bring it in front of the community, because in the end, they're going to have to buy into this project and really carry it through. So we haven't had that ability yet. And then we do need to get the public involved, but there is less freedom in a renovation of an existing building. So.
So I think that's great, but like I said, my concern is just, it's a black box, right? The community knows at this point is that we're 4 million over budget. We're doing some cost cutting, but I don't know. So if you design a kitchen and you say, I've designed a dream kitchen, but I'm going to have to cut $4 million. I kind of want to know what the before and after was. So that's my concern, is that I think right now people have a lot of questions. No one's upset, but they're just kind of like, what does it mean? Because you're talking about almost 20% of the budget being value engineered. And I think you're 100% right. I think it can be very positive if we're transparent, if we're communicating. And that's where I'm saying right now people are concerned because there's new leadership that, people just don't know what's going to happen. There's 5 kind of rough looking portables, parked on the road. And so that's where I think it just has to be transparent, where people know what decisions were made. We made a decision to reduce this, we made a decision to do that, rather than, oh, don't worry about it, we cut 20% off and this is what we're getting. So that's where I think it's just, there's a black box element to me, because with that Beaufort Elementary and Robert Smalls, there was just a different sense of, we weren't in a mid-program reset, where all of a sudden, the fourth large project comes up now, like, hey, we're kind of running out of money. We need to cut $4 million. So we just need to message it. We need to be transparent with the community. I don't disagree with any of what you're saying. I'm optimistic and positive about it, but I think we need to be careful on messaging, because right now what all people are hearing is that it's going to be 20% less than we thought it was going to be. And they don't even know what it was going to be.
I was going to say.
So just how do we communicate the decisions that were made?
And I want to get out there in front of the community. I mean, we need to.
My suggestion would be, if you're in front of the community, say, here's some of the decisions we made and why. Here's the beautiful product you guys are going to have. Like, when we're done, it's going to be fantastic. We did have to make some changes. Here's the things we did, and here's why. And I think people will be satisfied. But I think if we don't do that part, there'll be a lot of questions. So.
No, and to your point is, when we take it to the community as well, we have to have room to get some feedback and to be able to implement some of that as well.
Good, I feel satisfied with that.
So Mr. Corbin, I have one question, or Robert. So can you explain, again, what this district level 1 unencumbered funds of 16 million is? I mean, in reality, is that kind of a contingency fund in reality?
What you have up there in District 1, and then if you wanted to follow along, you could open up that first attachment that was provided. That's the 519 report. You'll see in there, that's where project management fees come from, legal. We have some radio equipment, advertising costs. We've got design services that we spoke of earlier. This is also where we pay for the CM pre-construction services out of, and some insurance requirements, but it's also where we have project contingency.
So some of the
with
things
that, what you see there is a recap that as of the end of August, the available budget on page 2 at the top, Robin, you'll see that there's a third line down under column M. There's the budget. That's what remains, and that's the 16,701,781 that you saw on the other sheet. But those are the type of items that go into that bucket.
So is that the number that equals the 12% contingency remaining?
Well, there's more
in there.
Everything on this page, and
Right
if
here.
you flip to the next page, the top 2 items.
Go up a page. Go up a page, Robin. Go to the
Everything
first
on
page.
that page is in that. So if you look here at the budget that remains, right here is 16.
701?
Yeah.
781?
Yeah, so that's that number.
Is that the 12%?
Well,
The
it's
12% is the line item on the second page, second line down. That's the 2,170,000.
it is in there.
It's in there.
It's included.
Go to the second page, Robin.
So it basically is a contingency.
Well, but there are other things in there that are like, so project management fees. So like what we pay here.
Right.
We encumbered fees for 4 years of their service. That's in there, and that's encumbered. And one of the things that we're looking at, so if we go to a 5-year, that 5th year is not encumbered. So that's an additional cost that we'll have to consider if we go to year 5.
But that line item still shows available funds remaining in project management of 3.3 million, which would be more than adequate.
Yeah, that's the top line. You look at the budget that remains all the way on the right, right here.
Right, but inside that, but inside that 16.7 million,
That's in that 16 million. It's 3.3 that has not been encumbered or spent or anything for project management fees.
and there's still, for example, if you go to that first page, Robin, you'll see another significant figure that still remains for design services. That's over 9.6 million. And that has been analyzed to make sure that the designs that still need to be funded for the remaining projects
See what it's tied to. So your
come from those funds.
right there, project contingency, there's 2.17.
Which is the same as this number here.
Should be.
That's what I'm trying to make all these, there it is, 2.17.
So that's that number right there.
That's it, right there. Okay,
And there's your 16 number.
Yep.
And here's everything that would make up that 16 that's left. So none of this has been encumbered. It's
Okay.
not been promised to anybody. It's not been.
Could you,
okay.
could you show us, show it to me too as well? Could you, tell me where I can find that out, what you're pointing out to her?
So I'm gonna walk up to this board, although I know you can't, you can see me. So the board, the referendum project list that Robin has up there, what I just told Ms. Fidrich is if you look at column M, the budget column, where she now has all those items in column M are what, and if you go to the next page, Robin, I'll go down. All right, so if you go down to this 16,701,000 in column M, right there at the top of the page, that's the number we're talking about. That's what remains in the district funds. It's the accumulation of everything above it, and you see right above it in project contingency is a 2.17. So that shows there the money that's in contingency. So that, I believe, answered Ms. Fidrich's question on where the 16 million came from. How does it show the 2.17 that's in project contingency, and what's in that 16 million? That's all the items you see there in column M.
I will probably have some more questions about that.
Oh, lots of night reading there if you want to dig into it.
With glasses and the magnifying.
Yes,
Okay.
you might want to blow it up on 11. I can provide it in 11 by 17 if you
No,
want.
that's fine. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, you're coming on
Okay.
at 6:27.
Yeah.
So ask your question.
You were on, I think, on the agenda to present this next week to the full board, right?
Well, I don't think we're ready to do, I mean, what
A construction update.
yes, I mean, yes, we can do however much detail you want. I mean, I think, typically you've done this as part of your report. We can, okay, the construction update, yes.
Yes.
The mid-program reset, I don't think we're ready for the full board. I'd say if you want to give a summation of what we've talked about, because we're not there yet. Whatever we do now, we're going to have more information next month.
Right. That was kind of where I was going with this, and I think we can definitely do a construction update as we should. We need to do that, but I was thinking I would just mention that you're still in the midst of the program reset, because it does seem to have some more questions that will emanate from that.
Yeah.
You have a thought?
No.
About right? Okay. Okay.
I have no thoughts.
No thoughts.
I will go ahead and take the liberty then to adjust this presentation material to remove the portion associated with the mid-program reset, and I'll deliver that revised presentation to Robin and Molly so that can be loaded.
Or you could just stop at that point. I mean, well, we can just leave it as is, as presented, and we'll just stop at that point and say there'll be further discussions on that at the next meeting, is what I would say. If that's okay with everybody.
I think that works fine.
That way we're not-
We'll just stop.
We're
it
not
right-
alternating.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks for the clarification.
All right. Let's see, the next thing on our agenda is any future topics. Mr. Smith or Ms. Boatright?
Well, we're gonna have Ms. Walton back our next meeting,
Right.
right?
Ms. Walton will come back in October.
I would like to put on our agenda that we look at our current policies for vaccinations with employees.
Vaccination
Vaccines are required.
policies, okay. Mr. Smith, any suggestions?
Not this moment.
Okay. All right. Well then, Mr.
Let's
Otter?
say we're gonna have the mid-program reset again. We're gonna have maintenance and cleaning, which is.
In October, yeah.
Yep. And I would like to bring the AR for athletics.
Okay.
There's some things, I've held that off for quite a while, but it's one of the things I need to take care of and finish off before it moves on to student services.
I was just going to ask you, so that is still coming from you and not student services?
We're working together as right now, but for the
Okay.
most part, I'm keeping up with it. Trying to find a good time to make that transition. And one, I want to get this AR,
Okay.
something I feel like I've been meaning to take care of, and I
Okay.
need to get it taken care of. And get to the end of football season and everything, and then we'll make that transition.
Okay. All right. Ms. Hartley?
So Robert, I'll get with you about the AR for
Yes, ma'am.
athletics, and then if Mr. Grissom and I could bring the OE on safety and security and do the superintendent's interpretation, because that comes in November is when that annual report on safety and security.
Okay.
Hey, Robert, I had one question for you that on whether or not it needs to be on the agenda for the next operation committee. The designer selection committee, I believe, has been making good progress, and I think that you were planning to take the recommendations to the board next month. Is that something that you'll run through the operation committee first, or can they just go straight to the board?
I would hope to take it to the first board meeting, so it'll be before operations. As a matter of fact, I'd like to get that moving, so unless there's a concern about that, I'd rather just go to, and it'll be an executive session.
Okay.
So it's-
Okay.
And can you remind me, what would that be again?
Pardon me, Mr. Smith?
Could he, what was that? He said that he wanted to take it straight to the board?
It's gonna be the recommendation for architects, for next round of architects. So it'll be a contract recommendation for approval of contracts for architect selection.
And what would be the process of you selecting the architects?
Okay, so right now, Mr. Smith, I think we're just doing topics. I think that would be a little off topic to go into that process, but it's a great question and certainly will be addressed, could be addressed at a different point. But right now, we're just talking about topics. All right. And I know, Robin, I'd like to get with you and see what your list is. You've got a list of some future topics too, as I recall. I don't know if they differ from this, but there are a couple of things that I feel are, and I have my notes that are kind of outstanding. So, okay. Anything
Seems
else?
like we always just have too much stuff.
I know. Well, I did,
One thing, and you have like four.
I know. Speaking of bringing the athletics, which will be under student services, I did email the chair and Dr. Rodriguez to ask for some clarification as to where student services, with which committee it will be aligned. Operations as operations and human resources, and right now student services.
And communications.
And, you know.
And communications and safety.
Right.
So we have a lot.
And just so you know, Dr. Stratus has told me that she's instructional services, not student services.
No, I understand that. That's right. That's why I just need some clarification from Dr. Watts and Dr. Rodriguez as to what the expectation is for this committee. So I hope to bring some of that forward as well. So, all right. So is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Have a pleasant